Hey everybody, welcome back to Living Traditions Homestead. It is a time of year that we get excited about every winter, and that is the time to finally get started working in what we call the sprout house.
Yeah, this is the time of year where the seeds are starting to come in the mail, or we're digging them out of our stashes that we've collected over the fall and the late summer so that we can figure out what we're going to be growing and we can start some of those seeds. Now, really, overall, with a few exceptions, it's really kind of early to be starting seeds for the garden outside.
Right.
But it's not too early to start seeds for transplanting little seedlings into our greenhouse.
Right. We're going to go over a little bit more about that once we're inside, kind of figuring out how to know when to plant things in your greenhouse versus outside, because it's not as easy of information to figure out or to know exactly when, but we've gotten pretty good at it over time.
Now, we do all of this seed starting and some other things revolving around seedlings in our sprout house, which is behind us. This is a portable building that we purchased actually probably 6 years ago,
yeah,
almost 7 years ago, to have put on our original property. And it's been very, very helpful to us.
Right. So we'll show you around once we get inside of there. A lot of you have seen it already, but we recently had that building moved from our original homestead property here to our new homestead property. We had all new electric run inside of it, and you guys, it is all ready to be used this spring. So why don't we head inside? We'll show you guys around a little bit, and then we're going to get busy talking about what we're doing for the greenhouse, how to know when to do everything, and exactly what we're going to be growing, how much, and why. So this is the sprout house. It's a little messy right now. We do have a little straightening up to do today, but we thought we'd bring you guys along for that so we can kind of explain some of the equipment that we use as we're getting everything set back up. Now, basically this, we have this divided into a few different areas inside of the sprout house. We built a workbench. This is where Sarah and I start all of our seeds. And over the course of from like now until I'd say April, we will probably start anywhere from 2,000, maybe even 2,500 seeds here at this bench. So we get a lot of work done here. Then we have shelves here. You can see on this shelf, I've already got our grow lights set back up. We use the purple grow lights or the pink grow lights. They're blue and red spectrum grow lights. We really like those. So we've got these hooked back up. Eventually we will have grow lights here as well. You can still see they're boxed up from moving them down here, so I haven't put those back up yet. But there will be 3 grow lights on each one of these shelves. And then you can see chains here. Once we have all of our seeds started and we don't need this workbench for starting seeds anymore, we also hang grow lights here, and then we have this entire thing covered with trays as well. So we've got our work area, we've got our shelves. We're actually going to add a 3rd shelf in here this year so we can do even more. And then back here we have a heater. We did insulate this entire building after we bought it. So the walls are insulated and so is the ceiling. So it stays very nice in here. We installed a propane heater in here. When we first did that about 3 years ago, we installed what's called a ventless heater. Ventless heaters are nice because they're easy to install. They're very cost effective. They're pretty cheap. You can pick them up at like Home Depot or Lowe's. And we thought that that was going to be a really good solution until a lot of our seedlings started to die. They started to almost burn up. And we couldn't figure out why. We thought maybe it was the grow lights. We just couldn't figure out why. Eventually we figured out it was the ventless heater causing the plants to die. So we switched it out for a vented heater. So this actually vents out this back wall. And ever since then, we've had no problems at all. So there is a link to this in our Amazon shop. If you're going to set up a similar place like this, I would recommend a vented heater instead of a ventless heater. And then this back here is just a little storage closet where we keep our extra pots and trays and things like that, some tools that we have in there. And that's just a storage closet for overflow items.
So like we said, today we are starting the seeds for our greenhouse, and not all the spring and summer stuff yet, just those. It's going to end up being just under 100 seeds. Now, the only real thing that we need to get ready yet in the sprout house is we haven't put up the heat mats onto the shelves. And I only need 2 heat mats today because the 100 plants are going to go into 2 separate seedling trays. Now, heat mats are very helpful for starting seeds because it increases the temperature of the soil, and soil temperature really controls how quickly your seeds are going to germinate. You can get seed mats in many places. There's not just one place to get seed mats. You can get them on growersolution.com. They have actually several different types of heat mats. You can get them on Amazon, and you can actually get them at Walmart during the season where they bring out all their seeds and all their spring planting things. These heat mats will be on all of the time. Now, we do put our lights on a timer. They will go on for 16 hours at a time and then go off, but the heat mats will always stay on. So they're plugged in, they're going to be warming up, and as soon as we have those seeds planted in the soil, we can put them on there, turn the lights on, and they will be started for the greenhouse.
Now, before we get busy actually planting our seeds and showing you guys what we're going to plant and how much and all of that, I wanted to take a second to talk to you about how to know when to plant things in a greenhouse or a high tunnel. You would think that this would be pretty easy information to find out, but the truth is, as we've been doing research over the last couple years on this, there really isn't a good resource out there for learning when to plant in a greenhouse versus just planting outside. If you go to Google or something and look up planting times for your area or things like that, you can find, there's tons of planting calendars, but they're all for about growing outside. So after doing a lot of research and talking to other growers in our area, so I have some friends who are commercial growers that grow in greenhouses, and they've kind of told me a few things that they do. I've come up with a pretty good plan that I'm going to share with you guys. So I think the best advice that I found online was to basically pretend like you are about 400 to 500 miles south of where you actually are. So we are in, Missouri, southern Missouri, and for us, if we went 500 miles straight south, we'd actually end up in the ocean. So that didn't exactly work for me. So I kind of went southwest, and that took me to about Dallas, Texas. So I went online, and I pulled up a planting calendar for Dallas, Texas. Looking at this planting calendar, it says things like tomatoes should be planted. Now again, for them, this is outside. We're going in a greenhouse, though. It says to plant tomatoes March 28th. Now, one of the growers that I know in our area who grows tomatoes commercially in a greenhouse told me that he plants his tomatoes around the end of March. So knowing that and looking at this, I'm guessing that this is going to be pretty accurate information for our area. So I'm just going to go off this Dallas, Texas planting calendar and pretend that basically inside the greenhouse is Dallas, Texas, and these are the dates we're going off of. But again, if I were you, there's 2 pieces of advice I would follow. Find a planting calendar for about 400 to 500 miles south of you, or just plan on planting your things in the greenhouse about a month or so earlier than you would plant them out in the garden.
So last summer was our first full summer where we could grow in this big greenhouse here. We did a lot of experimenting to see what would grow well in there and what wouldn't, and we learned a ton.
So the greenhouse that we have here on our new property is 20 feet wide by 60 feet long, and it's about 12 to 15 feet tall at the top. The sides are about 7 feet tall. Now, our greenhouse is not heated in any way other than by the sun during the day. So at night, it still gets cold. It still gets whatever temperature it is outside. For the most part, it gets in the greenhouse. So we're not talking about a heated greenhouse. So like Sarah said, last year we did a lot of experimenting in this new greenhouse because we weren't really sure what to expect, and we didn't want to kind of overdo it on that very first summer.
We were also very nervous about growing in a greenhouse over the summer. We were so worried that the internal temperature was going to be so hot that nothing would grow.
Right, things would basically burn up.
Right, so we just planted a little bit of a lot of things to see what would happen.
Right, and the truth is, you guys, we were blown away with how well everything pretty much did in the greenhouse. I don't think there was anything that I would consider a failure.
So overall, we've learned what we don't want to do in there, at least this summer, and what we want to do a lot more of this summer. And we're so excited to share some of that information with you.
Our ultimate goal, really, and last summer really solidified this for me in particular, is that over time, I would like to transition the majority of our growing to the high tunnel instead of outside. Because in the high tunnel, we can really control things a lot more than we can outside.
One of the biggest things that we deal with kind of climate-wise or environmental-wise here in southern Missouri is that the spring from about April 15th until almost the 1st of June, since we've been here, has been so wet. There's just been so much rain that it's been almost impossible for us to plant our summer garden outside. Even though our last frost is generally around April 15th and we could put our tomatoes and peppers in pretty much right around that time, it's been so wet that we haven't been able to plant until almost June the last several years.
Right.
Another thing that really kind of saved us, especially last year, is we are able to put up a shade cloth over the entire greenhouse, which really cuts back on the intensity of the sun and the intensity of the heat.
Right.
Last summer in particular, we had such a hot summer, and the sun was so intense. Really, we watered so much, it just didn't matter. Outside. The plants were so scorched. They really had a hard time outside without that protection of shade cloth. But inside the greenhouse, you guys, because of that 40% shade cloth, things just took off and thrived. And plants like our tomatoes and our peppers did way better, and our green beans, just a lot of things did way better in the greenhouse, even though it was completely open, like all the sides were open. It was just that added benefit of that shade cloth that just helped our plants tremendously.
You know, one misconception, I think, and we definitely had this wrong when we started growing in a greenhouse, even at our other place. I was under the impression that the shade cloth over the greenhouse was to help keep the temperature down. And while maybe it does by just a couple degrees, it's really not enough to keep the temperature down significantly. But what it does do is it takes those super intense sun rays that are scorching your plants, and it just kind of softens them. So even though it may be just as hot in the greenhouse, that super intense sun isn't just beating down on the plants all day long. And I really think that's what made the big difference last year, because the greenhouse was just about the same temperature as outside, just without the rays just beating on the plants.
So that's what we mean by in the greenhouse, we can control things a lot more than outside. Right.
We can control the amount of water that the plants get. We can control the amount of shade that the plants get.
And another big thing that we can control in a greenhouse more than we can out in a large in-ground garden is really the quality of the soil.
Right. So because of all of that, like I said before, our ultimate goal is to really, maybe never completely replace outdoor gardening, but to really move a lot of our gardening into the high tunnel. And that's really what we're going to be doing this year already. We're going to be planting quite a bit in the greenhouse and less outside. All right, so let's talk about what we're going to be planting today and why we've chosen to plant these things.
So currently in our greenhouse, we have 84 tubs, 84 of those big black containers. Now that greenhouse would hold way more tubs than that.
Right. If we really
needed to.
in.
Yes, but right now we're using 84 tubs in a particular configuration that can be moved if we want it to be moved.
Right.
So we have decided this summer that we are going to do half of the greenhouse in tomatoes and peppers.
Right.
And that will, that'll take over like half of our tomato needs.
Right.
And most of our pepper needs for the entire year.
Right. So yeah, basically we're going to be planting half of the tomatoes that we would normally plant outside are going to go in the greenhouse this year instead. And when we get to actually planting our outdoor garden, we're only going to plant half as many tomatoes.
Right. I've also realized that through preserving, through freeze drying, we have a lot of peppers freeze dried for future use. So our need this year for peppers is significantly less than we have needed in previous years.
Right.
We're going to be concentrating on roasted red peppers this year and jalapenos so that I can make salsa. But the bell peppers, we only really need enough for fresh eating during the summer. So let's start with tomatoes.
Right. Let's start with tomatoes. So we're going to be doing two different types of cherry tomatoes this year. We did these both in the greenhouse last year as well. And you guys, they grew almost to the top of the greenhouse. I mean, I actually needed a ladder to pick the tomatoes off the top because they were that tall. But they were also just unbelievably excellent. And you guys know I love tomatoes. It's the favorite thing that I can grow. So there are two types of cherry tomatoes that I have settled on after years and years and years of trying different tomatoes. In our area, the two that I grow now every year and won't change are, first of all, one called Juliet. They're kind of a longer grape type tomato. And the reason that I like these is not only is the flavor excellent, but it's one of the few varieties that I have found that doesn't crack from the summer heat. And then the other cherry tomato, which is an heirloom, and you can see we actually did save our own seeds for these last year. These are called large red cherry, and they are also an extremely crack resistant cherry tomato. I think maybe we had a handful of them crack all last summer. I mean, barely any. We're also doing two types of paste tomatoes in the greenhouse this year. The Amish paste tomato, which again is an heirloom tomato. We picked these up at Baker Creek Seeds. And then the other one is one of Sarah's absolute favorite sauce tomatoes, which is the Salvaterra's Select. And you can see these are something that we also saved seed from ourselves last year. And then the final tomato that we're going to be doing in the greenhouse this year probably is no surprise to anyone who has watched us over the years. It is called Jetstar. It is another hybrid tomato, but it is by far the best performing tomato that we've ever grown. And even though we can't save seed from it, we will grow it every single year that we can. We got these seeds from a company called Totally Tomatoes. That's where we order them from pretty much every year. And again, they're called Jetstar. We're going to be planting a lot of these in the greenhouse this year because this is normally our main tomato in the garden. So we're going to be planting quite a few of these in the greenhouse this year.
Okay, let's move on to peppers. Peppers are one of my favorite things to grow, probably my ultimate favorite thing to grow. My second favorite is growing tomatoes for Kevin.
Sarah doesn't like
I don't like raw tomatoes.
She likes cooked tomatoes, but she doesn't like raw tomatoes.
But I love to grow them, and I love to grow them for Kevin because he loves them so much.
And I eat enough for both of us.
You do. So we are going to be growing several types of peppers in the greenhouse this year. We are going to be starting with California Wonder. It's a really tried and true bell pepper. We're going to be doing California Wonder. We're going to be growing the Craig's Grande jalapeno. We get these seeds from Baker Creek. They're always a fantastic performer. We're going to be growing Not-a-Peno, which is a not spicy jalapeno variety. Great for snacking.
Right.
Tastes just like a jalapeno, but doesn't have the heat. We're trying a new variety called Lipstick. It's a red, small, sweet pepper. Great for snacking. We're also trying the Sugar Rush Peach Pepper, which is kind of a sweet pepper, but does also have some spice.
Right, it's supposed to start off sweet when you're eating it and then kind of kick in with some heat at the end.
Another bell pepper that we're going to be trying this year for the first time is called the Ozark Giant. It's a nice big bell pepper.
Right. Those were recommended to us by someone who works at Baker Creek, so we thought we'd try those.
Right. And the last pepper that we're going to be trying in the greenhouse is going to be another first for us. It's kind of a special story. The pepper is called ají arnaucho from Peru. Now, the original owners of this property that we're living at now, what we used to call the farm property, and we've moved here full time, the grandson of the original property came to us and said, you know, I have some really special seeds that are from Peru, which is the country that my wife is from. And he gave us some seed and really hoped that we would try them. And this year is going to be the year that we're going to grow these.
Right.
We're going to save seed because it's really a pretty rare type of pepper to be grown, especially in the United States.
Right.
And so we're going to be trying these for eating, but we're also going to be saving these seeds. And I almost forgot that we are also going to be planting some of my favorite red roasting peppers, Ajvarsky peppers. We saved a bunch of seed from them last year, and we're going to be planting them. This is the pepper that I'm going to be hoping to harvest the most out of so that I can roast them, have them fresh, but also to freeze dry them, turn them into a powder. The favorite thing right now that I'm using roasted red peppers for is to make roasted red pepper Alfredo sauce.
It's so good.
It's so good. And that's what I'm looking forward to growing these for this year.
All right, so that's what we're going to be starting seeds for today. We need to get these done today because we need these to start coming up, because it's only going to be a matter of a few weeks before we really need to get our butts in gear and start seeds for the farmer's market. And that, you guys, takes up everything in this sprout house. Once farmer's market planting time starts, everything else kind of goes out the window. So we need our own seeds to be germinating and coming up first. So let's get busy. We're going to show you, what equipment we use, how we plant them, and we're going to get these all done today.
So we are going to get started planting some of these seeds. I just want to take you through some of the supplies that we're going to be using today while we're kind of going along. So in these tubs, we have just some general seed starting mix. Now, we've used several different types of seed starting mixes over the years, but you guys, just any seed starting mix that you can find is going to be fine. Now, we are going to be using the seed starting mix. It's been pre-wetted. We actually added a bunch of water to this so that it could soak it up and be nice and moist already for today. We added that yesterday. We are going to be filling this plug tray. This is called a plug tray with the seed starting mix. The plug trays that we use hold 72 little seeds. And the only reason why we use these plug trays like this is because we do such a lot of seed starting and a lot of growing. And you guys, there is absolutely nothing wrong with starting in the little pots, starting your seeds in the little pots. But again, because we start so many seeds to sell, seedlings at the farmer's market, it makes the most sense for us to start in these plug trays so that we can put all of these on the heat mat and get as many sprouting as we can in one go round. So in this tray, we're going to put all of our tomatoes versus tomatoes and peppers in one tray, because the tomatoes generally germinate a little faster than the peppers. So I want them in separate trays. So we're going to start out with the tomatoes. We're going to plant 18 plants of the Jet Star, and then 6 of basically everything else. One row here is 6, so I'm just going to be separating these here like that. And then we'll write in what's being planted in every row. I have both of the trays labeled. This one is for the peppers, this is for the tomatoes. Now, tomato seeds and pepper seeds are really planted the same way. You make a hole about 1/4 of an inch down into the soil, put your seed in there, cover it up, water it, put a humidity dome on it, which I haven't shown you yet, but we'll show you that, and then put it on the heat with some light, and it should germinate in about a week or 10 days. The peppers will take longer than the tomatoes, but that's generally about it. So just let me show you really quickly. I'm starting with California Wonder peppers. Like I said, just make a little hole. You can use a pen, your finger, a dibble, about 1/4 of an inch down. Put your seed in there, cover it up, and move on. It's as simple as that. Now I'm gonna work on the peppers. Kevin's gonna work on the tomatoes, and we're gonna get this done in no time.
So we've got all of our seeds planted. That is, again, I think, what would it come out to, like 80 some seeds that we planted today. And again, these are strictly for our own use in our greenhouse. It won't be for another couple weeks until we start everything for the farmer's market. So now that we've got all of the seeds planted, we need to water them. What we like to do for our plug trays is we use a waterer like this. This is just a pump up sprayer because it gives a nice gentle mist on the seeds. Once the plants are up and they start to, you know, come up a little bit, then we switch over to a waterer like this, which is just a homemade waterer that I made, but we fill this up and then you can use this to water your plants, and that works really well once the seeds are up. But this is a little bit more gentle on the seeds. It doesn't like push them down in the ground further or anything like that. So we'll push that or pump that up. We want to make sure we get these pretty soaked. Even though we didn't plant any seeds in these cells over here, I'm going to water them anyway, because if those dry out, they tend to kind of pull moisture out of the ones that do have water. Because what we're going to do is, before we put this on our heat mats, we're going to cover this with one of these clear trays that's called a humidity dome. And if these are dried out over here, but these have moisture, these are going to kind of try to pull some of that moisture over to keep themselves moist. So we're just going to water the whole tray, whether there's seeds or not. And that ought to be good for that for today. So we'll cover that one up. And then we'll do the same for the tray that Sarah planted of the peppers. Alright, and we've had the heat mats plugged in now since the beginning of this video. And they are nice and warm already, so that's good. That will heat that soil up over the next 12 hours or so and give these a perfect environment to start germinating. So we're going to put these on. I'm going to turn the grow lights on. And now we have the grow lights on a timer. They will be on for about 16 hours per day, but the heat mats stay on 24 hours a day until the plants germinate.
So those guys are all set. We will check them at least once or twice a day from now on to make sure that they haven't dried out. Water them again if they need it, and we will be watching them every day to see if they sprout, because this is really like the most exciting part of this time of year, is watching all those seeds for the first ones to germinate. It's just awesome.
Right. So you guys, this is an exciting day. Our first time starting seeds in the sprout house here at our new property. So that's exciting, but most importantly, it's always just fun to get started on the next growing season.
That's right. You guys, if you are enjoying our videos, make sure that you hit the subscribe button below if you haven't already. And remember that the best way you can help us here on the homestead is just to share our videos on your social media. Until next time, thank you so much for stopping by our homestead. Take care and God bless.
God bless.